Hey guys, how's it going? It's the Tominator. So it's been a while since my last video, and I apologize for keeping you waiting like that. I don't like to get into my personal life on here that much, but if you want to know why my output has been reduced these past couple months, you can always follow me on Instagram, since I post more about that type of stuff on there. Link in the description below. But anyway, now that I finally got a bit of free time on my hands, let's get back into this best body parts series, where the next item on the agenda is the latissimus dorsi, aka the lats. This is actually the largest muscle of the upper body, and the most important one for the back, because this is what gives bodybuilders that distinctive V taper. As such, the main poses we're going to be considering are the front and rear lat spreads, which are designed to show off that V shape and the raw width of the lats. We'll also consider the back double biceps because this pose exposes high lat insertions. This will rule out several popular candidates like Rolly Winkler and Dennis Wolf, whose backs look wide and impressive as hell in the lat spread or front relaxed, but appear rather shallow and even underdeveloped in the back double. But anyway, onto the list. Kicking things off is the latest winner in the 212 division, George Peterson. He might not be big enough for the open class just yet, but this guy's back is already world class. He's like a Lee Haney and Robbie Robinson all rolled up into one. And while the traps are really good, it's the lats that steal the show. Look at how low they insert. Look at all the feathering along the inside there. It's nuts. Now that he's no longer constrained by the weight cap of classic physique, and its perplexing decision to omit the lat spread poses, expect Peterson to continue to grow and improve, although it's difficult to see how he could fill out that front lat spread much better. The rear lat spread, however, could still use some extra oomph to really make it a knockout punch. Don't get me wrong, it's already a strong pose, but there's at least one other guy in 212 who can probably outdo him, and this will be our first honorable mention, Ahmed Ashkanani. Here's someone who probably none of you were anticipating, as he's not exactly a household name, but nonetheless, Ashkanani has one of the craziest rear lat spreads I can recall seeing in recent memory. He's broad as a barn door and just has so much wow factor in this one. He also looks great in the front version, sort of like a mini RAMY, at least upstairs. The legs are a different story. And in the front relaxed, he's reminiscent of Rolly, with those lats just jutting out like twin tumors under his arms. But like I said earlier, it's the back double biceps that gets him. See how he's kind of getting his ass handed to him here by Flex Lewis through the mid to lower back? And Lewis is not someone I considered for the best lats of all time. He's too narrow. But his insertions are more favorable. So that's why Ahmed Ashkanani fails to make the cut. Even so, I felt he deserved a mention for that extraordinary width. Speaking of which, how about Big Ramy himself? It doesn't get much wider than this. Of all the guys currently competing today, I can't think of any who have filled out the front lat spread more consistently over the past 6 or 7 years than Ramy. Width is the name of the game here. He's got that width from another planet, as King Kamali once said in reference to Jay Cutler back at, I think it was the 2011 Mr. Olympia. And honestly, you could probably swap Jay in for Ramy. They're both very similar when it comes to the lats. But I believe Ramy is just a tad bigger than Jay was and looks a little better in the back double bi, so that's why I went with him. And while neither of these primetime mass monsters compares to the favorable back genetics of someone like George Peterson, the fact is that they utterly outmass the crap out of him, and that's gotta count for something. But if Peterson keeps growing, I could definitely see him jumping up a couple spots in the coming years. Here's a great comparison shot with Phil Heath and William Bonac from the 2017 Olympia, where they each bring different things to the table. Phil packs the most detail, with the most defined lower lats, but he's also the narrowest. William has insanely low insertion points, but that's almost to his detriment here, as it makes his waist appear wider and kind of hampers his taper. Ramy has the widest back and the best upper lat development. So, take your pick. When it comes to the pose on the whole, I'd give it to Phil. But when we're talking strictly about the lats, it's a lot tougher to call. But come on, let's not get it twisted. This is just from the rear. Ramy smokes them both in the front lat spread. Here's another shot with Dexter Jackson, who is our second official honorable mention. Dexter would have easily made it on here, as his lats look insane in the rear lat spread, especially over the past couple years. I believe this photo was from around 2016, and it's not even his best look, but regardless, you can note all sorts of thickness and quality muscle going on there. The problem with Dex, though, is that his front lat spread sucks. It's always sucked, and that's an integral pose for showing off the lats, so that's why he'll have to settle for an honorable mention. Alright, next up at number 8, we've got your 2019 Mr. Olympia, Brandon Curry. Say what you will about his subpar conditioning or lower body or what have you, but Curry's got one of the best backs in the business right now, bar none. His lats are wide, thick, and surprisingly shapely by modern day standards. In the past 2 or 3 years, he's really grown into some of these poses to the point where Curry now has arguably the best front lat spread in the game. And I'm not sure who among the current field can top his back double. Definitely Phil when he comes back, but other than that, who's beating him there? Possibly still an aging and over-the-hill Dexter Jackson, but not William Bonac, even though this is one of his strongest poses. William might have the better lower lats, but it's no comparison in the upper portion. Curry's just flare out so much farther, and his taper is way better. And here's a front lat spread comparison to drill home why Bonac didn't make the cut. His structure is simply not well suited for this one, and his lats from the front don't really look that impressive at all. Here's a back lat spread showcasing the awesome thickness and well-developed lower lats of Brandon Curry. This is the main reason I rank him above Big Ramy. Even if he's not quite as wide, the overall development through this body part is superior. Okay, and for number 7, we jump back in time to the late 90s, where a mass monster named Jean-Pierre Fuchs briefly made his mark. Fuchs' back was so good, there are certain shots where I literally mistook him for Yates at first. I mean, just look at this photo and tell me that's not Dorian-esque. And of course we'll be seeing more of Yates later, but hang on, speak of the devil, there he is now. I believe this photo was taken in '97 when Dorian was probably at his all-time worst, but Fuchs actually outdoes him here in the front relaxed, if we're being honest. He's bigger, he's taller, and has a slimmer waist to boot. Here he is at that same show displaying a wicked rear lat spread. And this one's from '98 from the front. Now, based on this look, the lats do appear a little high, but man, do they ever flare out wide. Here's a backstage angle with Jean-Pierre Fuchs in the center, Ronnie Coleman to his left, and Mike Francois to his right. Talk about density. These guys were all known for lifting hard and heavy in the gym, and it shows. Now, obviously, Ronnie's a cut above, but I would definitely put Fuchs above Francois for the simple fact that his lats are both lower and fuller. There's just more muscle there. Francois to me was always more about the traps than the lats, whereas with Fuchs, the opposite was true. So even though he only shined bright for a year or two, I feel that Fuchs' lats were just that good, and he earns his spot. Okay, and this next entry might surprise you a bit, as we go way back to the 70s with Franco Columbu. Truth be told, I had no idea where to put him. I don't think he's worthy of the top 5, and certainly many of the more modern guys we've just seen would dwarf and demolish him head-to-head. But at the same time, I had to give him ample bonus points, considering the era in which he competed. And, the lack of, let's just say, certain hormonal resources at his disposal. There was really nothing like this for the time. Franco's lats were in a league of their own. Sure, Arnold might have achieved better back development overall, but not when it comes to the lats specifically. Columbu's insertions were just so dang low, and his rear lat spread was easily the best for his day. There's a reason why they called him the Bat. Those lats just hung off him like literal bat wings under his arms, right? Even in the ab and thigh, for God's sake, the lats and serratus were probably his most prominent features. The late great Franco truly had a unique look to him, and like I said, while I'm not sure where exactly to rank him, all I know is that he definitely belongs somewhere on this top 10. Okay, and you want to talk low lats? Look no further than our number 5 contestant, Kai Greene. Kai has some of the densest, thickest lats of all time, there's no question. I don't have a picture of it, but when they turned around, it made even Phil Heath lean over and shake his head in disbelief, back at this very show, the 2010 Arnold. Speaking of Phil, he's going to have to settle for an honorable mention this time around, mainly because he's just not wide enough. You can see him kind of getting bullied here in these lat spreads between Dennis Wolf and Kai. And this was in 2013, mind you, arguably his best shape ever. So while he might have been more complete and conditioned, Phil's coming up short in the lats. It doesn't matter which pose. As for Kai, it sort of depends on the year. It seems like he was generally able to expand his lats more fully back around 2011 to 2013 or so, because this rear lat spread from 2016 isn't looking too great. It may have just been a poorly timed photo, but I don't think so. But anyway, that's Cedric McMillan to his right, and Cedric could also get a shout out, but he doesn't quite make the cut. His lats appear a little asymmetrical here, and they aren't as large as Kai's in the back double. Kai also had that inner feathering like what we saw earlier with George Peterson. Only a rare few individuals in history exhibit this feature so clearly, so we gotta give him kudos for that. Next up at number 4 is Joel Stubbs, a giant of a bodybuilder who could have probably challenged for the Olympia title if only his legs measured up to that enormous back. This guy had lats for days. It almost looks chopped because they're so disproportionate to the rest of his physique. But I assure you, these are real, unaltered contest photos. Here's another one in the front lat spread looking like he's about to take flight. The lats were also a selling feature for him even in the front double. Ironically, it's the back double biceps where they looked least impressive. The lats still look really good, but not as mind-blowing as in some of these other shots we just saw. Here's one with Tony Freeman, who had a great back and was known for his V-taper, yet Stubbs is wiping the floor with him. And of course we gotta throw in a gratuitous gym photo just to show how monumentally wide this dude really was. He honestly looks like a dang alien in this one. I haven't seen something like this since, well, not since the next guy on our list, Ronnie Coleman, coming in at number 3. I bet you thought he'd be first, or at least second. But no, to my eyes, third place is fitting because even though his back was insane, as we all know, his lat spreads were rarely as good as you'd expect them to be. Earlier on, sure, he hit them pretty well and usually looked amazing. But by the early 2000s, his posing was a little off. Maybe it was a flexibility issue, or perhaps he simply added too much muscle everywhere else to still hit it effectively. I don't know. But whatever the case may be, this isn't it, Ronnie. Moreover, the lats themselves began to atrophy a little towards the end there, and he couldn't seem to open up as much as he used to. But man, in his heyday, Coleman's lats were damn near as unbeatable as he was. Here's one from 1996. I believe this was either the Toronto or the Montreal Pro, where he's already smoking one of the greats, Flex Wheeler. Now, Flex had one of the sharpest, most separated backs ever, but Ronnie is pretty much matching him on detail, and his lats are so much meatier, it's not even funny. Here's one from 98 with Nasser to his left and Flex again on his right. And this is why Wheeler wasn't considered. He's just too damn narrow and weak in the rear lat spread. This would make even Phil look wide. Nasser appears to be holding his own pretty well, but was he really? This rear relax from the same exact show proves that he wasn't. It was just a mirage because Ronnie's kicking his ass too. Here's another honorable mention I had to throw in somewhere because people kept bringing his name up. Orville Burke. Yes, this guy had some truly freaky deaky lats. My problem with him is that they were way too high. I just don't think that this is ideal. It looks kind of odd, but I can see the arguments for including him. Based on this shot, it's kind of shocking how well it translates in the back double, actually, because usually guys with high lat insertions look like half their back is missing in this pose. So yeah, Orville Burke, definitely deserving of some recognition, but not quite top 10 material in my book. Okay, so who could possibly bump Ronnie out of the top 2? How about the first man to win 8 consecutive Sandow trophies, Lee Haney? Lee is my pick for runner-up because his lats were far and away his best body part, and like Franco Columbu before him, he was so far ahead of the curve. Now, Ronnie or Kai's back may have been bigger and denser, but it's important to remember that Haney competed at least a decade or two earlier, back when 240 to 250 pounds of stage weight was considered an extreme mass monster. These days, that's average, or even downright lean for someone of Haney's height. But anyway, prior to the 1990s, I challenge you guys, name me anyone who excelled better in the lat spreads, front or back, than this man right here. He may not have been as wide as RAMY or Stubbs or Ronnie, but his waist was tinier, and that made his lats pop that much more. It's like what they say, bodybuilding is about the illusion, right? I'm not just judging this on who had the biggest lats. I'm not exactly taking out a tape measure here, so you need to factor in proportion, shape, insertion points, all of that. Plus, as with Franco, I'm awarding Haney some bonus points for attaining this level of development back in the 80s. Here's some awesome comparison shots from the 1991 when Lee and Dorian went head-to-head for the first and last time. It's important to keep in mind that Yates was just starting out, and Haney was pretty much maxed out, okay? So obviously, the multiple-time reigning Mr. Olympia is going to beat the untested newbie. And as we all know, that's exactly what happened. If you examine these photos, Haney trounces him in the lat department. The only one that looks close is this off-angle rear lat spread, but even that I'd give to Haney if we're just focusing on the lats. And this is why, unfortunately, Dorian will have to settle for a mere honorable mention. As good as his back was, those lats just didn't quite do it for me. Okay, JK guys, JK. Obviously, since we haven't seen him yet, Yates is our number one. It was a tough decision because, on the one hand, certain people like Haney, Kai, and even PETERSON have lower lats, and therefore I would say better genetics when it comes to this area. But then again, how many of them could outdo a prime Dorian in the back poses? Sorry, but none of them are touching this rear lat spread from 1995. Probably none of them are beating him in this front lat spread from 94 either, and I only say probably because Haney was so exceptional in it. Here's another look with Nasser El-Sambadi and Sean Ray, and we basically already ruled out Nasser when discussing him with Ronnie, but holy cow, that has got to be the single greatest back lat spread that Sean Ray ever hit. He looks huge for his size, and those lats attach so low, it's kind of like a more aesthetic William Bonac. So yes, Sean can claim an honorable mention because his lats were pretty outstanding. It's just that he never had the size to hang with most of the other names on the list. And also, as wide as he looks here, and in the later years of his career, a major criticism of him early on was that he lacked width, and that was pretty much true up until this very year, 1996. After that, he tended to fill out these lat spreads a lot better. But anyway, back to Yates. Check out this epic rear relax from 97, his final contest. Now, granted, it's mainly the traps that really draw your eye, but the lats are also elite. Just hard, dense muscle, and unlike the rest of his physique by this point, still totally intact and symmetrical. And one of the things that made his ab and thigh so surprisingly strong was his excellent taper through the lats. I suspect it was Dorian's love affair with the Nautilus pullover machine that made his lats stand out so much from the front. Of course, it's mostly genetic as well. And here's one final side-by-side featuring the two best backs in history, the Shadow and the King. In this fictional comparison at least, I have Yates coming out on top by a hair. It's super close, but his lats just seem to flare out a little bit wider. Granted, this might not be exactly to scale, and from my own experience, it's ridiculously tough to get the scaling bang on. But just in general, I would agree with the assertion that Yates was slightly wider than Ronnie, and that's one of the main reasons I give him the nod here. But honestly, you could go with any one of these top 3 or 4, depending on the pick, the pose, and the year. It's so close, we're splitting hairs here. Alright, so there you have it, folks. The top 10 sets of lats in bodybuilding history. Thanks for tuning in, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more if you enjoyed. Until next time, this has been the Tominator signing off, and I'll be back.